This episode is part of a series where I take already published memoir and break down what works about it and why, and what might not work about it and why. I found that when I'm teaching my memoir method concepts to writers, they benefit from seeing how these principles play out in memoir that you can find at the bookstore. This month, I've been looking at the memoir Renegade Agency by Andrea Verbanic, and today I actually have her on with me and we get to talk about her book and her process. And something that makes this episode especially fun for me is one, this is the 100th episode of the Memoir Method podcast, and two, Andrea was my very, very first memoir client. And so this feels like a really fun full circle moment. I'm really excited to talk to her about specifically her publishing process, and I'm just really excited to get into it today. You are listening to the Memoir Method podcast, the place for writers, readers, and anyone who appreciates the collective power of our stories. In this podcast, we explore the impact of memoir alongside an examination of writing techniques and strategies used in the genre. Whether you are a writer looking for inspiration and guidance or a passionate reader seeking meaningful connections through shared experiences, the Memoir Method podcast is your go-to conversation spot. I'm your host, Charlotte, editor, writer, and the heart behind Charlotte Writes. Let's get started. So, hi, Andrea.
Hi, Charlotte.
I love talking about my first memoir client because you were just such a dream to work with.
I loved working with you. Wasn't that just a special time? Wasn't it?
It was. And yeah, you slid into my DMs and I was just starting to get this business up and it was perfect. And
it was.
I feel like I run work with my one-on-one writers much more professionally now. We have calls and we were just kind of flying by the seat of our pants back then. But
it worked.
It did work. You have a published book out there.
Yeah. It worked. Yeah. And it didn't feel like flying by the seat of our pants, even though it kind of was. Like, I definitely didn't know anything about what I was doing. Mm-hmm. I know that you knew what you were doing, but I didn't know what I was doing, right? Mm-hmm. So even though it was your first, client, technically, this wasn't obviously the first time you'd ever done this. That much was obvious because I learned so much from you through that process. I did. I absolutely did. Yeah.
I'm so glad.
I did.
When I say fly by the seat of my pants, I did know how to edit. But as far as like running the business side and kind of leading clients in this way, I hadn't done that before. And so you were just such a fun person, an interesting person to do this with for the first time.
Yeah. I don't know what it was like from your side, but I know from my side that it was just such an experience because I was learning as I was going, because I truly wrote a book because I had a purpose, not because I set out to write a book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That wasn't it.
And actually, a lot of writers that I've worked with, it's not uncommon for them to come to me and say, oh, I'm not really a writer, but they have this story that they want to share, which is what your experience was.
Yes, I had this story. And one of my friends, I had this really wild life experience that I'm detailing in this memoir, but I was so stuck in it. And then randomly, one of my friends one day said, you should write a book about this. And how often do you hear that? People say, oh, I should write a book about this, or you should write a book about this, but it landed. Mm-hmm. It did. I thought, you know what? I am going to write a book about this. I am going to do it. That conviction that you feel?
Yes.
When you really are going to do something, there was like no question. Like, I am doing this. This is going to happen. And even though I didn't have any experience, I didn't have any education, I didn't have any clue what I was doing, I just went ahead and sat down at my kitchen table when my kids went to school and started writing.
Which I love. And that conviction is really what is going to carry you through the million rounds of revisions and all of the roadblocks. I just wrapped up work with a writer recently, and she said, you think that once you've finished the first draft that you finished the hard part, and once you've done this, you've done the hard part. And I said, yeah, that's how you know you're a writer. When you feel like you've already done the hard part, but you're like, oh, that actually wasn't the hard part.
Right. It wasn't. Although, people say they don't like editing. I liked the editing process. I thought it was fun.
Well, you were
I did. I did. I liked the editing process. I didn't think it was, we cut out a lot because I tend to just write a whole lot and then go back
Yeah.
and cut it out. So I didn't find that to be hard. I wanted to do that. I knew it was too wordy, but I thought the editing process was fun. I thought the cutting was fun. I thought the going back and forth and talking about
Mm.
things was fun, and the shaping of the sentences was fun. And my husband said recently, he said, "Too bad you didn't have Chat GTP when you were writing that book, because sometimes you spend an hour on a sentence." And I said, "That's the fun part. I don't even want to use ChatGPT. Like, that was the fun part, is
Yeah.
messing around with that sentence or that paragraph for an hour. It was
Yeah.
fun."
I could tell that it was fun for you, just the way that we interacted and what you would send back to me with revisions. Like, I could tell that this
Hmm.
was something that was fun for you. And I feel like that is really important in the writing and editing process, is being able to keep tapping into the parts of it that you love, because it's going to take a long time.
No, oh yeah, no, it took
Mhm.
forever. I mean, not forever, but it wasn't like I wrote it in a weekend. And it wasn't like the editing happened in a weekend. And I was also in graduate school when I was editing
You
it. And
were.
even, oh, remember that? Remember in March when you sent me an email and you're like, "Are you still there?" And I said, "Charlotte, I'm barely hanging on." Okay. It was like the midterm kind of thing. And it
Mhm.
was so hard. But even during that, people think, "Oh, I don't have time for this." You do. You can make time. You can make it work no matter how busy you are. You can figure it out.
You can, and especially when you can tap into that fun side of it, that makes it easier to show up. And that also just proves to me just how committed and convicted you were about how
Yes.
important it is for this story to be out there.
That's
Mhm.
where it was coming from. Like, I had a story in my heart. I had lived through just a horrible experience, and I felt a deep need to tell people about that. It was actually a moral obligation. I
Mhm.
felt that I had a moral obligation to share this story with people, because I knew it was going to impact. I knew it was going to have an impact. And that's how you keep going. That's how I kept going. I wasn't just writing it, for fluff. I had a mission that I was on, and that was easier for me.
When I work with writers, I always try to tap them back into, why are you writing this? Like, why is it important? Because it can't just be about you and about your story. This isn't a journal. And so being able to think about that, like, I love that you have a moral obligation, and that, like, really came through in our process together, but also in the final product. Like, and in the way that you talk about it online.
Right. Which, I am my least favorite topic of conversation, which is hilarious that I then wrote a memoir. I'm such an introvert, which I think probably a lot of writers are. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're not. I definitely am. I don't want to have my business out there, but I knew this story needed to be told. And so the fact that I had that deep conviction, and I was writing it essentially for somebody else.
Mhm.
I wasn't writing it for myself. And if I thought that this story just impacted me, I mean, what would be the point? I wouldn't need to write it for myself. Or I would have written a short story and sent it to my family or something, or
Mhm.
included it, in just personal family history. But the fact that I was writing it to advocate for other people, that's really where that conviction came from, and the desire to keep going.
Yeah, because your story has a lot of perseverance in it. And I do
Yeah.
remember kind of trying to figure out the end and how to land the plane without it taking a long time. But, like, that's one of the hard things about memoir, is that the ending is not always as tidy as you get in a novel. So just figuring out how to find that resolution, especially when it kind of is ongoing. The book ends with you going to all these different agencies. And I remember trying to figure out, okay, how do we tell that important part of the story without it feeling like,
I-
in Lord of the Rings, where there's like five different endings, like it fades out. And then there's another one. A
like a
lot of
slog.
writers struggle with that. Yeah.
Yeah, like a slog. Like,
Yeah.
how are we going to get through this? And you don't want it to be too wordy. And I also remember saying to you, "I know that this is weird, but I don't want the ending to be about me, even though it's a memoir about me."
Uh-huh.
I remember saying that because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to say, "Well, I did this," which I did do that. I did go to all the different agencies, but I didn't want it to be an ending about, you know, focus solely on me. I wanted it to be more community focused.
Which I think we achieved that.
I do. I like the ending. I like it. And you have to include it because it's part of the story. You have to include how everybody responded to me going to them and saying, look, this happened and this was wrong and it shouldn't have happened. And how are we going to not do it again? Because that's really what it's about. We can't go back and change the past. I wish that we could, but we never can. And hard things happen and bad things happen. But I think for a lot of people who have been traumatized or offended, what they want, or one of the things they want, is for somebody to say, we're working on this, so we're not going to do it to other people. I hear that a lot. I don't want this to happen to other people. It's the thing that we cling to. It's the thing that we hold on to.
Yes, and I think that motivation in writing a memoir, just thinking about how can my story improve my community, like that's something that I find easy to anchor into, as opposed to I'm making this about me. Because the truth is that even though memoir is about the author, it's
Mhm.
never actually about the author. It's about the reader. And
No, yeah,
like
it
that's a
is.
huge shift that writers that I guide writers through all the time.
Yeah, and I can see that you really helped me understand that too, that because I was struggling with the me aspect of it, but going into it, I already knew, even before I contacted you, that I was going to have to share all the painful, nitty-gritty, horrible things about my own experience in order to prove a larger point.
Hmm.
I already knew I was going to have to do that, and I had made peace with it, even though I still struggled when we were writing because I would think, I don't want to include this, or is this too much? But that's how you pull people in, right? So it's
Yeah.
social commentary in memoir. That's so effective for me, where you're talking about, yes, this happened to me, but this is the bigger picture, but you got to draw people in. And it's just a fact of human nature that you draw them in with the personal suffering.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of systemic problems that people will listen to easier when it is told in the form of a story.
Absolutely. Yeah, because otherwise it's a textbook.
Mhm. When that helps it land in an emotional way, and that's really what you want. People will act on what they find important when they have an emotional experience with it, whether that's you experiencing that yourself and becoming fiercely committed to improving all of these different systems at play, or someone who's reading it and having an emotional response to that and being like, oh, I really care about this. And I didn't realize that I cared about it until I read your story.
Right. And in my situation, I think it would be people reading it. Well, not all the time, but a lot of times people are reading it and they have no idea that what the child welfare system is.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they just have no idea about it. How would you if you're not in it? You wouldn't have any idea. You're just going about your life.
Hmm.
Right. So, I mean, you can make it real, like a big overview, but then it's a textbook and you can't identify with it because you think it happens to other people.
Hmm.
That's the thing. You think it happens to other people. When you bring in that personal side of it, then people identify with you. They identify with me. I'm just a normal person. I was
Hmm.
a stay-at-home mom. I mean, there was absolutely nothing extraordinary about me. I was just living in a small town in Kansas, minding my business. And then all of a sudden, this, meteor lands in
Yeah.
my lap, and then you're dealing with it. And I think that people can identify more with that. Even if they don't know the child welfare system, they would identify with me.
Yes. Which is why developing you as a character is important, even though it might make you a little uncomfortable. But
Yeah.
also just knowing that that also wasn't the point of it. I think that that shows a lot of maturity as a writer to be able to kind of see those distinctions.
Right. Although I have to say this, the first post I made about it, and I put it on my personal Facebook page, and I said, this happened to me, and this is my book. And a lot of people didn't know that it had happened because it was so traumatic that I just didn't speak about it
Yeah.
for years. I mean, a decade,
Hmm.
honestly. And then when I finally got ready to open up about it, it was people didn't even know what had gone on. They had no idea. But so then they started reading it, but then they also started posting, I'm so sorry this happened to you. So my second post was, guys, I'm fine. I'm
Hmm.
fine. I'm fine. And I don't get to choose how people receive what I wrote. That's on them. They're going to
Hmm.
interpret that how they do it. But it was important to me to do the second post and say, guys, no, sorry. I think you misunderstood. I'm okay. What I want you to get out of it is that there are a lot of other people who are not okay.
Yes. And I
They're
think that
not.
that was probably a risk that like that makes sense to me that that would happen, that you would get that response posting on your personal page with people who know you.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
care about, like, they know you and they care about
Hmm.
you. Whereas a stranger coming into this, and this is always such a hard truth that I have to communicate a lot. I'm like, your reader doesn't actually care about you.
Right.
They care about what happened to you and why that is relevant to them.
Right.
And so anyone who reads your memoir, if you go through something difficult, is going to say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you," because they know you and they love you. But I love that you had to say, "Oh, that's not the point. That's not why I wrote this." Like, thank you. I'm good.
This wasn't a ploy for personal sympathy. Honestly, I don't even want any of that at all. And what's interesting to me is that when I've spoken about it, sometimes people, they'll start asking, so do you still see the family? That's kind of the first thing that they want to know. Do you still see the
Hmm.
family around town? Like they're very interested in my response to the other family. But what I want to focus on is the bigger system picture,
Yeah.
right? Because I still kind of sort of, I'm system adjacent now.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of foster kids and I work next to the system, but not in it. So that's where my focus is. But I do have to recognize that, come on, other people are going to want the details. They're going to want the dirt, right?
Which, I mean, like, that does kind of make a good memoir, something like a little scandalous, like that.
Right.
I understand where they're coming from, if they want to know kind of
Yes.
what your interpersonal relationships are or not anymore.
Yeah.
And I did feel like you resolve that in the book. I remember saying, like, hey, how do we talk about this family, and
That
how
was
you ran
hard
into
for
them?
me.
Yeah.
That was hard for me, though. There was one part, I don't know if you remember, but there was one detail that I just could not get over the hump on
Mhm.
including it. And you were saying, this is really good. This is a really important part. You have to include it. And I was like, I don't want to humiliate people. And then I had my husband saying, well, if you're going to tell the story, you got to tell the story. And that's part of the story. It was hard
Mhm.
to think about including that. But I didn't use real names.
Yeah, use pseudonyms,
Yeah.
and also, as far I know, I actually get a lot of questions too about kind of the legal side of publishing memoir, and can someone sue me, or and because memoir is creative nonfiction, there's actually a lot more flexibility, because it's your own it's your own interpretation, and that is understood. People can put in disclaimers at the beginning, and there's actually a lot of ways to make that not problematic. People are going to have their feelings about what you do and don't include, because this was still such a personal experience with people in your real life.
It was important to me, even though a lot of people were unfair to me, it was important before I published it to be fair to them.
Mhm.
Throughout writing it and before I publish it, and even afterwards, it's very important to me to be fair to people, even if they're not fair to me.
Mhm.
It's just the kind of person that I want to be. So I did give everybody the opportunity to respond to
Mhm.
what I'd written before. And I would have included it. I honestly would have in an afterword. In fact, I had my little recorder. I bought a recorder. I've never even taken it out of the box because nobody responded. And I was so disappointed because I did want to sit down and just have a conversation. I still really want to. I've not given up hope on that. I don't know how it's going to happen. It's like, I know I would love to sit down with a police officer or a DCF person or a doctor. I would love that. I don't know that they would love it as much as I would love it, but I would love it. And so I would have done that. I would have been very fair and I would have included it exactly how they said it, but we didn't get there. And that's all right. I mean, another thing like what you're talking about, it's scary when somebody writes a memoir and you're in it
Yeah. I mean, I
and
haven't had that
not in a good
experience.
way. Not in a good way. Like
Yeah.
nobody in my memoir is in it in a good way.
No. But just from the editorial side, something that really stuck out to me about my experience editing this book was you really cared about being fair, and you really cared about including transcripts verbatim, and like really like being as just being as like honest. Like, you didn't have an angle that you wanted to
No.
come at this with. And I always tell anyone who wants to write a memoir that you have to be to some point of healing. You have to start writing from a healed state, because if you don't, it is not going to land the way that it could land, or that it maybe should.
Okay, speak. That is the truth, right? So 2 points on that. The reason why I was laughing when you said it was important to me to include
Mhm.
dialogue verbatim, so it was, but I think in the beginning to the point of being obnoxious because they misrepresented my words horribly
Oh
in
yeah.
all of their reports. I mean, it was bad. They misspoke and said I said things I didn't say. It left things out. No, I that was horrible to me. So I, in return, wanted to be just super detailed, but you can't really write it exactly how somebody spoke it. And you were trying to get me to back off of that. Like you can still be exactly right without being verbatim.
Hmm.
And so that was hard for me to get to, but eventually I thought, okay, I'm being a little bit obnoxious here. And so I I embraced that. I did that. And then the second part that you're saying, you are 1000% correct that people have to be healed.
Hmm.
You do. We're never completely healed. I feel like I am, though. I feel like I'm so, I have just no emotional attachment to this anymore. I mean, I want my story to be told and
Yeah.
I have a real advocate's heart for it, but I don't have any emotional attachment to it anymore, which makes it so much easier for me to advocate for my story, tell my story, answer questions about my story. And when I email people, I always throw out the net and I email people, hey, I'm available for speaking to your class because that's one of my objectives is to
Yeah.
speak to classes. I always say I have no emotional attachment. So your students or your employees could ask me anything they wanted and I'll answer it. They're
Mhm.
not going to hurt my feelings, right? If they have
Yeah.
a question, I would have an answer to it. But I do see people who have just recently been abused by the system or somebody, right? And they're so tender about it and they're so furious because in the beginning, I was furious when it just happened to me. I was angry for a long time. And had I written it then, I think my book would have been awful. And I'm not just
Probably.
kidding. I mean, just horrible, horrible. It would have been a rant. It would have sounded nuts. It wouldn't have been what I wanted it to be. And so I published it 11 years to the day after the investigation started, but that was a good amount of time, you
Yes.
know?
Yeah. And you need to, I just think that shows a lot of just emotional maturity and just a really great perspective because one of your aims of writing the book was to have impact in the system. And you messaged me not long ago or emailed me saying that your book is required reading in a local college class, which is amazing.
I
Like
know.
that's what we wanted.
That's what I
And
wanted.
yeah, and so to be able to just have that detachment and that way you can advocate and show up for your story the way that you want when you don't have that attachment to it anymore, and that takes time.
It does, but I think you can get there. I just didn't want to live the entire rest of my life being really angry. And
Mhm.
somebody had mentioned the other day, I mean, long story short, that she had posted something and I had said something back that was, I think, fair and pretty objective. And she said that it amazed her how kind and understanding I could be about it, about these mistakes that the system
Mhm.
makes. And I don't know necessarily that I'm kind and understanding. I mean, I try to be, but I think it's just the amount of time that passed and the way that I wanted to recover from it because I did have goals in recovery. I didn't want to change the person that I am because of what happened. That was really, really important to
Mhm.
me to maintain my own sense of self instead of letting them turn me into or allowing myself to be turned into a person that I didn't want to be, which is angry and ranting and mean and unfair. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
And I think that can be true for any type of trauma, any type of
Yes.
hard thing that happens to you because sometimes things happen to you,
Yes.
and you get to kind of choose what you do with it after that. But
Yes.
I especially for writers who want to write about this experience, you get to choose the person that you want to be, and what happens to you doesn't have to dictate that. And that really comes through in your book.
Well, I certainly hope so because I don't want it to be something that's not constructive. And I also know the other side of it. So why would I want to be unfair to somebody I used to be? I mean, I used to do that job for 10 years.
Mhm.
So I can't attack people. I mean, you can be objective and fair, but you don't have to attack when you're being objective and fair.
Yeah,
Those two things don't have to go together.
no, they don't. And that that I think creates a story setting and a reading experience where the reader can make their own inferences. Like we can see, oh, that was not a great thing that this detective did. That was not a great thing that these DCF workers did. And without you having to tell them or say, see, look how horrible that was. Like it's it's trusting the reader to be smart. When you can write from a healed place, you also trust the reader to be smart and figure
Right.
out
And
their own stuff.
you had to help me with that though, too, because I remember asking you, do I have to explain this? Like, how much do I have to explain about what is happening or what's
Mhm.
going on here? Because you do want to provide the social commentary. Not everybody knows what goes on in the system, but it is exactly to your point. People are going to come up with their own response to what you've written. I don't get to choose that. They're
Uh-huh.
going to filter it through their own experience, and we have to trust them to do that.
Yes. And yeah, I'm glad that I was able to kind of help you figure out what needed more explanation, which is another point to partnering with a publishing professional because I was an outsider to the system. And so I it was clear to me like, oh, I can put these puzzle pieces together, but I can't put these puzzle pieces together. So let's figure out what the reader is can be assumed to figure out and what they might need more context on.
Absolutely. And that was the greatest part, right? Just
Mhm.
having somebody who is completely objective and doesn't really know me and everything that went on and isn't like my coworker,
Mhm.
right? A former coworker. It was really helpful. It was
Good.
just
I'm glad.
extraordinarily helpful.
Let's talk about your publishing experience because you self-published this book. I was so excited to pre-order it. I was thrilled when it arrived on my doorstep on publishing day. What made you decide to self-publish?
So I remember this distinctly. So after we were done and it was a finished product, I started going through, the process of sending out the queries. I don't
Mhm.
know what queries, whatever they
Queries,
are,
yeah.
queries. So I
Mhm.
started sending those out. I mean, I probably sent out, I think 40 or 50 the first time. And then for some reason, I took a break. Oh, you know what I think I did? I started trying to build a platform, which is very hard, and I can talk about that. But I started trying to do the platform. And then I started sending them out again. So I probably sent out 100
Mhm.
queries at least. And then I got an answer back from one, and it said, "Ooh, I'm just not as excited about this as I would need to be." Which I'm one of those
Same.
people that when you say something kind of snarky to me, I actually think it's kind of funny.
Mhm.
Right? Like if somebody
Yeah.
insults me or whatever, but I read that and I didn't get offended by it because I'm not very easily offended. Um, but when I read it, I thought to myself, why am I sitting around trying to convince other people that my story is important? I already know it's important. I am trying to tell other people this is a big deal. You have to pay attention to this. You have to listen to what I'm saying. We have to change this. So, why am I sitting around waiting for some agent that I don't know to tell me, okay, fine, good job, important story, we'll go ahead and do it. And also, I didn't have a platform. So I think I did it a little bit backwards, maybe than other people did, where I started looking at my book like my business card.
Mhm.
Because what I found was I would tell people, oh, I've written a book about this. And the next question they ask is what? Well, where can I get it?
I love that.
And
That's
I
a
would
really great
say,
way to come at that.
right. I would say, well, it's not published yet. Because, and in my mind, I'm thinking, because I'm sitting around waiting for somebody else to tell me that I can publish it. And it was a mindset shift. I'm not doing that anymore. I
Mhm.
have a story that people need to know, and I'm going to tell them the story. And I remember I was sitting in my chair and I said, I'm self publishing. And it wasn't even like hand wringing. I didn't go
Yeah.
back and forth and try to decide. I just said, I am self publishing this. And I have no idea how to do that. But I also didn't have any idea how to write a book. And I did that. And so I'm just going to get on the internet and figure this out. And I did, because you can do it. If you have a goal to do something, you can accomplish it. You can. And that's what I think people should come away with this, believing deep in their heart that if you have a story that you believe other people need to know, self-publish it. If you're having trouble doing it the traditional way, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's
No.
absolutely nothing wrong with it. It has worked out beautifully for me.
And I love the mindset shifts that you just led yourself through and with publishing, and I think this is more true now than it probably has ever been. It is a very subjective industry. So
Yes.
maybe if you had written this at a different time or were querying it at a different time to different people, like it someone may have bit and signed you on, but it's so subjective to opinions, to trends, to consumer buyer habits. Like there's so many subjective things that go into deciding what is traditionally published and what isn't. And so for you just to decide, I'm not going to play that game because the story needs to be out.
Yes. It doesn't, how long do you sit on it? Do you just sit on it forever? And then if nobody says, okay, we'll do it, then you just never publish it? Is that, I'm not willing to do that. I'm not willing
No.
to do that. And so I didn't do that. And another thing I think is important is I'm never, I mean, people like me who get investigated by the child welfare system, and also people who are way more disadvantaged than me, because that's who gets investigated by the child welfare system. They're not going to have a cult following. They're
Yeah.
not famous people. I'm not going to have, and they're not going to have millions of followers on social media. They're not going to have a brand. We're just regular, average people who are being investigated by the police and child protective services. And that's an issue. That's the whole point, is that there is no advocacy. It's like a one-sided story. So the system is telling the story, and then a bunch of people who don't have platforms can't tell their story because people won't let them. So no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to publish it myself.
Well, and I feel like that's such a, and you mentioned this in your book, but even just decide to self-publish and get this out there and not play that game is using your inherent privilege really wisely and responsibly, that is very much in line with the whole point of your book.
Right. Is I am in a position where I can do this.
Mm-hmm.
I am. I am in a position where I have the ability to do it, the conviction to do it. It is expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Self-publishing is expensive. So I had the financial, I mean, it was a lot, but I'm still going to do it. And I
Yeah.
did go through with it, right? So, but not a lot of people have that. They
Mm-hmm.
don't. And they're so traumatized and overwhelmed that even if they did have the resources, how could you? I couldn't have done it in the beginning.
Yeah.
And how many years pass and how many investigations are there that you let go by without your story being out there? I'm just not willing to do that.
Well, it's been just inspiring from my end just to see this conviction carry you through to publication, through to getting this book out to the people you want to read it.
Right. You know, when it's such a big story, when I hit publish, right? When you hit publish and you think, okay, December 2nd, 2024 is when it's going out in the world. And I hit it and I thought, oh, I hope I don't get fired. Uh, but I did it. I mean, I didn't know how people were going to respond to it. I
Mhm.
almost went to prison.
Yeah.
Like I'm a
Wait.
professional person. I had a job. Yeah, I could have gone. I could
Okay.
have been arrested and
Yes.
gone to prison.
Or
Like
are
that
you
was it.
talking about when during like
Oh,
when you
during the
started happening,
investigation,
or like
yes,
when it was
yes.
published? I was like, oh my
No, no,
gosh,
no, no, no. No, I could not have
part
been.
two,
I mean, I
please.
hope not. I hope not.
Hope
I
not.
hope we're not there. So, but no, I mean, I'm telling a story about how I could have been arrested,
Mhm. Yeah.
how I was investigated by Child Protective Services for child abuse. That's my story. And I'm a professional person. And
Mhm.
so it's like, I don't know about this, but I thought I'm not backing down from this. I'm doing it. And you know how it turned out? You know how it turned out? People that I work with advocate for it. They tell people about it. I didn't get fired. The opposite thing happened. And another thing is, I'm a therapist. My clients bring my book in and say, could you sign this?
I love that so
They
much.
do. They do. Because we work as a team. I work with them as a
Yeah.
team. Like that's how we do it. We're working and they, if anybody would understand, they would understand, right?
Yeah.
Traumatized clients, they would. So yeah, it's turned out way differently than I thought it would. It's a leap of faith, but you have to do it. And again, I use it like a business card.
Which I think, especially for any kind of memoir where there's an advocacy and a message, that like that's a wonderful way to use it, because like your memoir is actually square one of the conversation that you're having.
Yes, that is the whole point. It's the beginning. It's not the end. It's not like the launch is the end. And then however many books you sell in a month is how many books you sell. That's not how this is going. I just needed to have the physical book because I need to be sending out cold emails. And that's what I've done. That's been part
Mhm.
of my marketing is I have a desire for this to be in the hands of caseworkers, right?
Mhm.
I have a desire for this to be in the hands of people who are going to school, to be probation officers, this, that, and the other, social workers. I want that. And so I have to have the actual book to mail out to people with my little blurb. I just write a little letter and I
Yeah.
sign it and I put it in my little envelope and I mail it out and they don't know it's coming and I just say, "Hi, my name is Andrea Verbanic." You can do it. I would never have done that. Are you kidding? This is not the person. I'm doing things that I would never have done 5 years ago.
How does it feel to be doing them now?
Oh, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do it. People can do this. I can send out cold emails. I send them to judges. I send them to attorneys, to professors, people I've never even met, people who are running for office. I'm a very private person, but I have a story I want people to read. And so, yeah, I have no qualms about doing it. I just put it in my little manila envelope, run down to the post office, and send it on its way. And do they all bite? No, they don't. Not
Mhm.
everybody responds to me. I don't care. I hope they read the book.
Well, like that's really, I used your thesis actually in that, that we crafted in our
Hmm.
early days. We crafted a thesis together,
Yeah.
and I used that as a case study in my Memoir Method program to say, look, like there are so many different ways, like angles that we could have come at your story, but the thesis that you have now, which the way I kind of talk about now is that's your conversation that you're here to have. It's the same conversation. We worked together 5 years ago,
Yeah.
like almost 5 years ago, and you are still having this conversation. Like that's the mark of a really good thesis is one that you can just keep talking about.
Right. It's all I wanted to do. That's
Mhm.
all I'm doing it. And when the professor said, "Will you come speak to my class?" I assigned it as required reading. My husband said, "This is what you wanted."
Yeah.
And I was like, "I know it is totally happening and I want it to keep happening and I want it to shape things." Another thing I think it's important to recognize is that you don't actually know what's going to happen to it. And there are people that are sharing your story that you're not going to know it because somebody happened the other day to tell me in a private message that one of the foster care agencies in the
Mhm.
state of Kansas makes her employees read it.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So like there's
it sure
probably
is.
even more impact that you don't know about because people haven't talked to you about it.
That's what I'm saying. That
Yeah.
person never called me and told me that. And it was just kind of an offhand comment that somebody had mentioned in a private message. And I think they started by saying, "Oh, hey, I think I forgot to tell you that I talked to this foster care contract worker." And she said, "Yes, she makes her employees read it." It's a big deal. And I would never have known that. So your impact is not always what you can see.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
not.
And that goes to your point earlier, like it's just a leap of faith. Like you are
Yes.
carrying this conviction. It's only grown since you first started writing. And now you're seeing it actually bear the fruit that you had dreamed about 5, 10, 15 years ago.
Right. And it's just stamina.
Mhm.
It is because I'm coming up on a year since I published, but I have no plans to stop. I mean, sometimes
Yeah.
I think, "Oh my gosh, this is hard." But then I think, no, get over it. You're not going to put this much work into it and then not run the
Mhm.
whole race. So you just don't stop. You just keep going. And are there certain times that I take a break from sending things out? Yeah, because I have a family. I
Yeah.
have a life, right? So I'll take a break for a couple weeks and then I'll get right back to it. So you just keep working at it. You never doubt yourself and you just don't know where it's going to wind up. I just read a therapy book the other day. It was about domestic violence, and in the back of it, it said, no, it was a foreword that he had written, like an extra. What do you call those when it comes out like 10 years later and they write like an extra thing in the beginning?
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I'm
I
talking
I know
about?
what you're talking about. I can't think of the
Yeah.
word now, but
He
preface.
wrote it. And, yeah, something like that, or an addendum. I don't know. You would know. Why am I trying to come up with it? You're the one that would know.
Still
So
can't think of it. So who knows?
he wrote it and he said, when this first came out, nobody really read it. And then 2 years later, it became the Bible for this topic. So you just don't quit. You just keep going.
Oh, I love that. I was doing some more research earlier this year on self-publishing just to know how to really
Hmm.
support my clients past
Hmm.
the active editing stage. And something that I think is really important to note is for self-publishing, it's a starts out slow and it gains traction. Whereas with traditional publishing, you start out with a bang and then it trickles, kind of slows down a little bit. This is kind of it starts out slow and the more you do it, it speeds up.
That's a great way of saying that. I think that is true. And another thing to recognize about self publishing and the stamina that you need is I also thought when I decided to self publish, one of the reasons was nobody cares about my story more than me.
You have to have that. You have to
Hmm.
believe that. You have to
Yeah.
believe that.
Nobody is ever going to advocate for my story the way that I'm going to advocate for it. They're not going to understand it the way that I do, and they're not going to care enough to do it the way that I will do it. That's it.
If I could like just tell all of my writers one thing, it'd be like, you have to be the one that cares the most about your
Yes,
story. Like I care so much about my writers' stories. I love getting into it with them. I cannot care more than they do. Like
that's
they
it.
have to care the most.
They have to care the most and they have to believe the most
Hmm.
because nobody else is going to believe in their story as much as they need to. They're
Yes.
just not going to. You have to do it yourself, but you can. It's so attainable. It is.
And it sounds like it's a muscle, like a mindset muscle that you've just worked. And like you've been the one who's been clapping the loudest for yourself from the beginning of this project.
Right, but even when I wrote, the report that I reference
Uh-huh.
in the book, right? Because
Yeah.
it didn't start out as a book. It started out as well, first it started out as a letter, and then there was so many things wrong in the investigation, and then it was a report,
Yes.
and then it turned into a book. But I was advocating for this. I was trying to get people to listen to this before I ever wrote a book, right? That's always been where I've been coming from, is you have to listen to what happened because it keeps happening to other people. So, yes, it is a muscle. You just get used to advocating. You also get used to people, and this is going to sound harsh, but you do get used to people not caring. Not everybody that I send it out to responds to me.
Hmm.
Okay. Maybe they read it. I don't know. I don't need to know. I just have to keep going forward.
And even if they didn't read it, let's say they put it in a donation pile or a little free library or kept it at their house on a bookshelf, I think chances are that someone else is going to pick that up and someone else is going to read it. Like you're never
They,
going to know everyone who reads your book.
you're not going to because I'm not going to tell you about it. And also, it has come to my attention that people pass it around,
Hmm.
which is cool.
Yeah.
Which means they're talking about it. So no, you're not going to, but that's no reason to not do it. We don't get to control what happens to our story when it's out in the wild. We don't. It's a leap of faith.
Last month I was talking with another writer and she published traditionally and she said had to get to the point where she had to kind of just release her story and be like, okay, like this is in the hands of the readers now. They can make of it what they will. And again, like the process of marketing a traditionally published book is different from
Mhm.
self-published in a lot of ways, but just you being able to release and say, look, like I care so much about this, I'm not going to stop talking about it, and it's going to make it into the hands of the right readers whether or not you know about it.
Right. It is going to. And you don't know. I think this is just kind of a fun way to live, just in all aspects of life, is you just put it out there and you just see what happens. And you just have to trust that the right people will read it. It's just that trust that the right people will read it eventually. It's fun. It's exciting.
Well, and I want, like, just like you said, the editing process was fun. It sounds like the publishing process has been mostly fun.
No, it is fun.
Good.
No, it is fun. So don't go into it. Anybody who's listening to this, don't go into it thinking it's going to be a drag. It's fun. Picking out the cover is fun. It's fun. Even though I didn't know what I was doing then, and I sent them my ideas, and then they sent back something that was not what I said, and I was like, "Oh, right, yours is better. Yours is so much
You're
better
the
than my
professional.
idea."
Okay.
Right. So that was fun. Seeing it come back formatted was fun. You know, uh, Trying to figure out, the Ingram Spark and then Amazon Publishing was fun. It wasn't a drag. You can do it. They make it easy, right? And then I also think that thinking of ways to market it is fun. And I would not consider myself to be a marketer. I want to be very clear about that. I am marketing a book, even though I do not consider myself to be a marketing person. I'm
Mhm.
not real flashy. I'm not a
Yeah.
salesperson by nature, but it's fun to think of people that I can send it to or angles that I could take or people that I could talk to. It's fun. It's fun.
Well, like that is why picking a thesis is so important. No matter how you publish, your thesis is going to be your marketing. It's going to be the anchor of literally everything you do with this book. Comes back to a couple sentences that we figured out at the beginning.
Yeah, what am I even doing
And
here?
so if you can talk about that over and over and over, then you can market.
And you're going to be talking about it over and over again.
You will. You will be talking
Yeah,
about it over and over.
you will. And also it helps you figure out different things to talk about, right? And
Mhm.
there's certain things that I'm just not, it's not my wheelhouse. But I can talk a lot about certain things.
Mhm.
And my book, it's for DCF, the police, and the child abuse pediatricians. There's lots of different angles.
Yes.
There's a lot of them, and you just milk the different angles.
And a reader like me, who's not involved in any of those
Hmm.
systems, I did not realize how interconnected all these systems are. There's all these different players with their own systemic politics going into it. It's like that was eye-opening to me. I'm like, oh, like this isn't just one agency. Like we have
No.
multiple players, plus the
Yes.
people being investigated, plus the people filing the charges.
It's
Like
endless. It's huge. Yeah. And
it's
try
very
to imagine somebody disadvantaged going up against that. Are you kidding? I mean, it was hard for me. I could
yeah.
barely do it. I could barely do it, but
Well, and I think that that compassion that you have for less advantaged citizens and people, that I mean, from the beginning, I felt that as a really core driver for you was using all the privileges that you had in the system. Like you're married to a detective, like you kind of know how law enforcement works. Like you had all of these advantages that made it possible for you to navigate this in a way that you didn't get arrested and you were able to heal from it.
yeah,
When that's not possible for people with different resources. And so to use your story as a way to advocate for systemic change and the compassion that you have for your community, like that's going to be more lasting and outlast any frustrations
it
that you
is.
process.
It is because I actually do care on a very deep level. And I have compassion for people who are investigated by the system. I also have a whole lot of compassion for the people working in the system because it's hard. Right. I do have
Yeah.
compassion for them. I recognize how hard it is. I also have the ability to say when they're wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
I can balance that. And I think that's a strength that I bring to the table is the perspective. So when I'm talking about it, it's kind of hard to, I mean, it's easy for me to navigate, but it's harder for people to come against me. It's
Yeah.
harder for people to brush me off because I can say, oh, no, 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 I know exactly what you're doing. I know exactly how that feels because I've lived that on both sides. And I think that adds to a really unique perspective that I have that I try to convey to people. There's a lot we can do to make this better
Mhm.
if we get rid of all the funny business and really get down to it.
And I think part of your authority as a storyteller is that lived experience within the system. Like you,
Yes.
and we were very intentional with which types of stories and examples we wove into your story from your work as a social worker, and that I think really adds credibility
Yes.
to your perspective. You're just like, look, I get this, and also this happened. So I can speak, like you can speak more authoritatively and more
Yes.
decisively about the blind spots that the systems had that made things difficult for you.
Absolutely. And when people, it is very easy. You're talking about we have to heal
Mhm.
from our wounds in order to tell a story. So when you can tell when people haven't healed because they're furious and they should be furious. I was furious. I'm not saying they shouldn't be, but we tend to, when there's a social problem, we tend to just come up with these wild solutions that kind of make us feel better in the moment. Right. But I know the other side of it. And I'm thinking, okay, I understand where you're coming from on that. But the other side of that is, and this is what would happen if you did that,
Mhm.
because I see both sides very, very deeply and I feel them deeply. And I do honestly, even after everything that has happened, I have a lot of compassion for the people who work in the system and I want what's best for them too. I want them to be the best at their job. So the book is not a bash on them. It might seem like it sometimes, but it truly was written because I want them to read it and be better. That's it.
Well, and I think it's so admirable that you continue to work adjacent to the system and that you continue to speak to this, and that attitude and that mindset I think is a really really potent and powerful bridge between your message and the people you really care about hearing it and internalizing it.
Right, because if I'm attacking people all the time without understanding their perspective, why would they ever listen to anything that I said? Why would they do that? I would love for DCF. I did send them an email and I said, "Hey, could I just help you? Could please?" Could you just let me help you? And they didn't respond back. I realize it's touchy, for them because it was a huge mistake. It was, but I would in a heartbeat sit down with them and talk to them and talk to their case because I would do that in a heartbeat. I'm actually thinking about writing like a training manual based off of my book. I would love to do that. I would love to be able to go in and do trainings, and I wouldn't be unfair about it. I just really want my story to make things better, and I want people to trust me on both sides that that is my intention.
I love that, again, you're thinking of different ways that you can share this message and apply it. And so your book's been out for almost a year,
Yes,
and I feel like this is just the beginning still.
I know.
This is still just the beginning, which is kind of exciting. I think it's kind of exciting.
It is. Every time I get to a point where I'm like, have I run out of things that I can, like people to contact? No, there's never an end to it. There's always things that you can comment on and stories that you can relate to your own book. It's the beginning. I don't ever want people to think, oh, whatever happens in the first 6 months is just what happens.
Yeah.
That's how many people read your story and then it's over. You can't go into it with that mindset. That's very defeating. That's very small. You have to have a big vision. It has to be a long game. That's what mine is.
I think this is going to be true for any writer, self-published or traditionally published. You do have to have that mindset. Like, look, this is just the beginning. And I see a lot of kind of negative publishing talk come through in my feed sometimes, and just about how hard it is, and no one bought my book or whatever. And I'm like, I just have fun with it. Like, find a way to have fun with it, because that's
Yeah.
what's going to keep you going. And it is a long game.
It's a long game. You have to know that going into it, though.
Mhm.
If nobody's bought your book a week after, you're just going to quit. What? I mean, you can't get defeated about that. There are a lot of people who don't respond to me. I want to be very clear about that. When I send stuff out, the majority of them do not respond to me. But that
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing that. And it is the beginning, which is why I always refer to the book as my business card,
Mhm.
and why I self-published. I had to have the actual physical book to start the whole thing. It was
Yeah.
just the beginning. It's not the end. You can't think of it like that.
And I love, like, I just want all the writers who are saying, oh, do I self-publish or not? Like, it looks hard. Like, I just want them to look at you. I mean, like, look, that can be fun, and you just have to, it's the compound effect. I feel like the compound effect really plays in significantly with self-publishing, especially
Yeah.
because you just keep showing up, and now you're in college classrooms,
Yeah.
and your book is required reading for someone's employees, and
Yeah.
like, it's working. It's working.
It's working. It's working. I'm not an overnight success. I'm not whoever is the big memoir. I'm not Kristen Hanna or these huge, I don't need to be. I just need to be myself with my own story, right? And you just keep at it. It is fun. I hope people know that. It is fun. Writing is fun. Editing is fun. I always comment when people start talking about, oh, editing is such a slog. No, it's not. It's hilariously fun.
I think so. I have fun, but that's also
It's
my job.
so,
And I chose it
hilarious.
because it's fun for me.
It's so fun. Publishing is fun. Talking about your book is fun. The people that you meet are fun. You never know. Just fun. Just go into it with that positive attitude, that can-do spirit, that entrepreneurial spirit. You're
Mhm.
a book entrepreneur. You are selling your product. You can do this. You can totally do this.
My gosh, I love that. I
Yeah,
I think we covered all the other questions I had. Like, what would
good.
you tell independent memoir writers, self-published writers? I mean, if there's unless there's anything else, I feel like it's have fun. Let it be
Yeah,
fun.
it is fun. It's your story. If you lived through it, what could be harder than living through it? That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I love that.
What could be harder than living through the traumatic experience that you're writing about? That was the hard part. Writing about
Yeah.
it. I mean, please, self-publishing. No.
It's a walk in the park compared to living your story, living what you wrote about.
It is.
Oh, I
Oh,
love that.
Charlotte, I wish you the best. You
Thank
know,
you. Thank you so much.
you're
Yeah,
such a gem.
this was so lovely. Thank
I
you.
know. I'm glad that we got to talk on your 100th episode.
Yeah.
Oh, my word.
I feel like I just need to, like, go treat myself to a cookie or
Oh,
some
do
kind of
it.
celebration, or maybe just read a book. Maybe I'll just go read
Maybe,
that.
just sit down and don't do anything for an
Yeah.
hour. Maybe that'll be good. Yeah. Well, I wish you the best. I tell people about you. I absolutely
Thank
do.
you. Thank
Oh,
you so much.
absolutely. They need to know about you. You're a great person. You're great at your job. It just made it easy. Another thing is, you know how I have a real estate friend, and she says that it's like kind of like being a therapist because you
Oh,
do have to do a lot of not hand holding, but just encouragement. And I feel like
yeah.
editing has to be the same way.
Yes. And with memoirs, especially, I feel like I've been able to lean into my own strengths about being able to kind of see through a messy manuscript, see through what someone brings to the table,
Yeah.
and kind of meet them wherever they are because it is emotional. Even when you're mostly healed from it, it can still be hard to revisit. And so I always try to make a safe place for my writers
Yeah.
to have to experience that.
Well, you do. You're great at it. You
Thank you.
are.
Thanks
You're
so
really, really good at it.
much. You've just listened to an episode of the Memoir Method podcast. The Memoir Method podcast is presented by Charlotte Writes. If you liked what you heard, the best way to support the show is to subscribe through your preferred podcast player. And if you're feeling especially inspired, I'd love it if you left a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Leaving a review really does help other readers and writers like yourself find the show. If you want to continue the conversation, you can find me on my website at charlottewrites.co or on Instagram at charlottejanewrites. Thank you for tuning in. I'll see you next time. And remember that you have a story that matters.